Imogen, I have been waiting for this conversation for my entire life. And I mean that with the deepest sincerity. I have never met anyone like you. And it is a blessing to have you in my circle. I have to give a shout out to Suzanne for connecting us, because that bridge is one that I'm going to hold dear for a very long time. But enough with the platitudes. Let's get into it. My three-part signature question. I want you to take it all, some, or none, any way you wish. Imogen Roy, who are you? Who have you been? And most importantly, who are you becoming?
Hi, Miles. Thank you. Who am I? That is the big question that I'm sitting with as I look out of my window in rural Brazil, where street dogs play outside and hummingbirds tap on the glass. This is not where I thought I would be, and yet it is. I would say I'm in the middle of a big, what do you call it, identity shift, transformation process, becoming. I guess there's something so gripping and thrilling about being perhaps a third, perhaps a halfway through one's life, like I am, and waking up one day and realizing that you're not who you thought you were. And there's a lot of grief, but also a lot of freedom in that. Who I think I am, the part of me that's coming to the surface, is far more loosely constructed than I previously thought. Definitely I'm leaning into roles like writer or facilitator of unusual experiences, conversationalist, creative, and mostly I'm excited to see what emerges next.
I'm excited for you. And the timing for this podcast couldn't be more perfect on multiple levels. And we're going to unpack those levels as we get deeper in the conversation. But I want to frame this question a little differently with some feedback. And I've sat with this because I wanted to come up with a box to put you in to explain to the audience who you are and why you're here. And I couldn't. And therein is the je ne sais quoi that makes this so special. In my opinion, you're a timing strategist. So structurally, you're also a business astrologer. And I don't mean that with a cliche or an asterisk. And what you deliver is, in my opinion, proximity to better, and not coherence, but proximity. And it's for that reason that I'm so excited to discuss a lot of different things about not just business, but profit, also positive cause, where we're moving as humanity, and most importantly, what you put on me that I hadn't thought about at all during our prior conversation was coherence as an asset to delivering better. But I also recognize you as an individual that founded 6 companies. That's a world traveler with a British stiff upper lip that's trying to get some Yankee rebellion in them. I saw Edinburgh at 17. I saw MySpace. I hear about nightlife. I hear about a loved one in your life. And I hear and experience you as someone that's still chasing, wondering, and wandering, which I find absolutely remarkable and invigorating. So what I'd like to start with is the word precision. Help me understand what precision means for you personally and what precision means for you professionally.
Sure. Before I get to that, I just want to, I hope that anyone listening to this who does not yet have Miles or a Miles type in their life gets one soon, because to have your morphic self reflected back to you like that is such a blessing. And we're talking about precision. That is what I just experienced from you. So thank you, Miles. I am indeed all of those things. So, precision personally and professionally. Before we started recording, I was talking about a precise place where you can, or at least I experience, entering a different level of consciousness. And it's like knowing the exact place, the exact groove on an LP, on a vinyl record, that your body knows and remembers, and you put the needle gently on that place, and the track plays exactly how and where you want it. And that kind of precision is something that I don't know exactly where that comes from, other than perhaps a combination of embodied practice. So doing something over and over again and paying great attention to how you do it. And the discipline and discernment to remove all other options, information, and noise from your field. Um, I was having a conversation the other day with my wife to be, Cynthia, and we were talking about kindness and honesty, and actually is honesty kindness, which comes first? And I feel like precision is a kind of honesty as well. Precision, especially in interpersonal relationships, I often experience as someone who is kind enough to be honest enough to not say what doesn't need to be said, and to take the attention or time or courage, whatever which one it is, to land and reveal the thing that needs to be said or needs to be shown. Like, precision makes me think of Michelangelo, how he would describe, you know, well, how do you carve an angel from a block of marble? Oh, it's easy. I just carve away all that is not angel. And you hear that and you go, oh, come on. Like, what
Right.
a douche.
Right? Kind of cliche. Like, please, you're a master savant at what you do, and you're going to distill it to such a simple thing as just take away what's not necessary. Like, give me a break. Like, I'm tracking with you hard. So you're talking about a shift here. You're talking about a massive shift.
Yeah. But well, I hate hearing, like, just carve away everything that's not an angel. I do think the guy was onto something. I think that there is, and whether it's a state of attention, a state of consciousness, a place we go to, clarity we can arrive to, where actually, yes, you can get there. You can be that precise, where you're like, actually, if I really listen to all parts of myself, yeah, that page in the slide deck is totally unnecessary. I'm using it just to justify my worth in this pitch. Or that zero that I took off, that quote, is also, it's not precise, but it's not true. I'm doing it because X, Y, Z. We've all had moments where we could have been precise, but for many reasons we chose not to. And sometimes it can be as simple as carving away all that is not angel.
Okay, so let me ask you this question. Is precision also the practice of letting go and accepting the
Mm.
unknown and not having a defined path or trajectory? Is that a precise behavior?
Let me think. Instinctively, I'm thinking it must be. Like, I think if I think about the visualization of what precision is, I think about a large amount of pressure being applied through a very small surface area. So, for instance, the needle on the vinyl record, like, you put that tiny needle in this tiny space, and this big sound comes out, and you're like, whoa. So I do think that there is an element of letting go enough to just, it's like minimum viable dose, right?
So, first principle thinking. Let's break a
Mm.
problem to its most basic, undeniable truth is
Cheers, by the way. I'm
precision.
having a shot of cachaça.
Looks like a cocktail. Sounds great. I'm joining you.
Brazilian spirit, quite similar to whiskey with more tropical flavors. Absolutely fantastic. I advocate widely and highly that you all try.
Wonderful. So, getting back to precision and unknowing and compression, when you're compressing things to create proximity, you brought up a word as we were discussing business principles, which I think are applicable to a much larger conversation, which is coherence.
Mm,
What does coherence mean for you, and why did you share that with me?
I think coherence to me is it's when everything is true. So a coherent decision is not the easiest to make. It is not the one that has, it's not necessarily a win-win for every single person. It's not, doesn't maybe perhaps look like other decisions that have been made on that topic, but it's the one that feels most alive and honoring all of the parts. Okay, let me think about that another way. Miles, you are so good at making me get so serious. All right, let me think of a different example. I think coherence removes the need for a lot of effort. So I've founded and run a lot of businesses, and I've also advised a lot of businesses, maybe about 40, 50 at this point. And one of the tools that I was using in a few cases was a tool called systemic constellations, which is like a mapping tool you use to reveal invisible tensions, blocks, you know, stuck stuff in a business system, in a business model, in an employee network. And um, it is basically how to make a map of incoherence. So where you have secrecy, certain individuals have kept stuff secret because of their own self-interest, because of the hidden rules of the business. And that secrecy is gathering energy, and it's creating a kind of stagnation where people in that department or people around, they can feel that like something's not quite right, but no one's saying anything about it. But that energy, that thinking and that wondering and that is it or isn't it creates a kind of it creates energy, and it blocks, right? So instead of people using that energy to create the new thing or streamline this or whatever, they're thinking about what's not being said. Um, and so one of the ways that I would work with a company or a leader or a department head or whatever to once we'd mapped the incoherence was to try and heal the incoherence by allowing energy to flow through the model, flow through the communication channels, flow from, through the bank accounts, um, was to remove all of this excessive effort in hiding things, denying things, blocking things, people not being listened to, people not being recognized, people not being seen, um, and just addressing all of that. Not finding it wrong, not finding it problem, not being said this person needs to be held to account. This is a problem. Just being like, oh look, for many years, this department has been hiding this information from this department because they thought blah blah blah. Okay, it is what it is. Like, let's all look at it. Let's all go, okay, this was happening. And does this need to happen anymore? No. Okay, so then let's recognize that and then resolve that. And it's amazing how these like little chiropractic adjustments of just let's look at something together, let's acknowledge that something was there, then creates flow, right? Things just start working again. And so for me, I think coherence is a bit like precision. It's like you strip away all of the excess stuff that doesn't need to be there. Um, and you're left with a business, an organization, a system, a decision-making process that's super lean, that feels super true. You can actually, people in it can like feel their aliveness. They
Mm.
can hear themselves. They can hear signals coming from other parts of the business. Like, it just clarifies the signal a lot better. Um, it's really hard to show all of this stuff on a spreadsheet or, a revenue model, or justify it as a business expense. You know, usually things have to get really bad and like really expensive for someone to have called me in to look at it in such an unconventional way.
Okay. Let's sit on that word
Right.
unconventional for a moment.
Right.
Systemic constellation. New word for me. I'm going to be in a rabbit hole tonight studying on that. Is it mysticism or is it science?
Hmm. I don't know, because I I went down that rabbit hole when I experienced being in my first constellation, and it felt like the truest thing I had ever witnessed. And so I didn't actually bother to check the science or check the mystical origins. I do believe it has origins in um, shamanic practices used by some African tribes, and it was brought to Europe by a guy called, okay, a guy, right? We'll come
A
to it.
dude.
A lot of people, when they have a constellation, is in it for a family matter, family system. People who have questions like, why have I never been able to get on with my brother, no matter how much, no matter what I've tried? Or why will my father not see me as the person I really am? Or why do I feel like I'm living someone else's life, not my own life? And so a lot of people come into this work with family questions. Um, and I did experience my first family constellation. And I watched people that I had never met before, but known for a few hours because we were doing this exercise together. Um, be told, okay, you are Imogen's mother, you are Imogen's sister, you are and step into a circular space in a room and become my family. Move like them, have gestures like them. Um, and I was like, what is going on? What is this? And it felt like the truest, most honest thing I'd ever witnessed. And after that, I thought about, well, what about for other things other than family, right? What about business? What about um, communities? What about ecological questions? What about any kind of system or group? I've constellated on how to figure out why, like, waste collection is not working properly in a community. I've done constellations for like why a revenue stream suddenly dried up. I've done constellations as to why um, employees keep leaving. Um, so how I think it works is that there is a field. There is a net of being, of consciousness, and all pieces of information, everything that is known or experienced or true is in that field. And if we can tap into that field, whether it's through doing a constellation with objects or with actual people, or someone might go to a psychic or a tarot card reader, or someone might just sit quietly and with a pen in their hand and go, I'm just going to write the first thing that just comes to my mind, and then I'm going to take that as my decision. What all of these things have in common is I think that they are practices for tapping into this this invisible field of information, um, and being able to map things that we can't necessarily see or even measure, right? You mentioned science, but it doesn't mean that they're not known.
So you're giving us permission to explore the possibilities of what might be or what could be, deploying different tools and assets to bring clarity to problems.
I'm not just giving you permission, I'm giving you full encouragement to go forth and experiment in your own ways. Um, and it feels actually like a really urgent topic to me. I think we can all agree that the world is changing so fast, and it's changing in a way that's beyond logic. It's actually becoming almost impossible to track, measure, understand with logic or science or, psychological frameworks alone what is going on amongst people in businesses, in institutions, in behaviors. Um, I think it's urgent that everyone start to explore and practice what does it look and feel like for me when I get information or a nudge or an intuitive hit or a sign or like, oh, I just kind of feel like trying this. I just kind of feel like asking right now in the board meeting something I would never normally ask. It feels inappropriate. I just kind of feel like doodling a little bit and just seeing what emerges. Does that make sense?
100%. And I'm dancing between intuition and consciousness. And I have a ton of questions there. So I want to put a pin on that. Um, and we'll circle back to it. I want to ask some very blunt questions of you with
Mm,
reverence and respect. And
mm.
you're,
Please.
you're welcome to push back and not answer because I think it'll help frame this conversation,
Yeah,
but maybe not.
please do.
Are you clairvoyant?
No, but I might be clairsentient.
And what is that?
So voyant means voyeur, voyer, French for seeing. Clairsentient, senti, is to feel. So when I receive information, it's more of a sudden realization or a feeling I get. It's like it's a vibe. It's a vibe, and it's like, oh no, not this room, not this table. Oh yes, this person. Um, ooh, not this person I'm going to sit next to on the train. So it's more of a feeling. It's just like an instant, quiet but unmistakable knowing of like yes, no.
Are you clairvoyant?
I don't I don't know actually, Miles. You know,
So I got the clairsentient, but I keep coming back to the clairvoyant
mm,
because it's of deep interest. And then that leads
mm,
me into questions about remote viewing and precog. And I'm
yeah.
trying to understand
So
the gifts that you have.
okay, so if you're talking about like maybe I can see things other people can't, yes. I think I've been getting stuck on like I hear people saying I'm clairvoyant. I can like see the future. I can see. I I don't think I can do that. And well, unless it is true that time is all happening at the same time. There is no such
Yes.
thing as past, present, or future. I
Wow.
can definitely see things that other people cannot see with ease.
And when you say you can see them,
Mm,
is that physical sight like I would experience that? Or is that more of a spiritual, like an essence or an, how do you experience that?
okay. So it's a combination, I think, of seeing and feeling. So okay, so here's one story, right? When I was traveling, which I was traveling when I was 18, all over the world, backpacking, a new friend of mine had their backpack stolen. And I was like, oh, I might be able to find it for you. And so I basically, what I did is I got into a state of consciousness where I could become the backpack. It was a purple Jan Sport backpack. And so I was like, I'm going to become purple Jan Sport backpack. And what I felt was that I was in a very dark, damp space and it had an earthy kind of mold smell. was very crowded, and so I was like, "Okay, so maybe I'm in some, like, cupboard with a lot of other objects in a not very well insulated home." Um, and I had this sensation that I was in a hole with a lid, like a pot. And anyway, fast forward, this person was actually able to, with the help of a local guide, find the neighborhood and actually the house where their backpack was. And the backpack ended up being in a closet that had been carved out of the earth, and they'd put like a it was sort of a diagonal angle, and so the closet was not insulated, it was just like earth. And then they put a closet door on the top of the hole. And I was like, wow, like I felt that. I felt that experience of being the backpack in that hole. So it's a for me, it's a combination of like seeing, I would get like flashes of the journey the backpack took, like as if it had eyes. And then I would get sensations of like what it felt like to be in that place. Does that make sense?
It does. Have you had this your entire life, or is there an event that then awoken it
No, an entire life.
your entire life? And do you have any siblings that have this experience?
Um, I'm one of 5, maybe 1 does. But this is not stuff that we talk about, and even this is not stuff that I would normally talk about with anyone, let alone on a podcast, Miles, so
No, there's a reason we're talking about this, and
I
this is.
know. Okay, let me tell you one thing, right?
I'm not a
So
skeptic.
I have been like this my whole life, and I just thought I was crazy. I thought I was a scary, crazy kid, and I was really, really scared that if my parents found out the things I saw, the places I went, and like the voices I heard, they would put me into an institution. Because my parents did, with good intentions, take me to a child psychologist, I think when I was about 2. And I don't have any conscious memory of that interaction. However, my body remembers fear about being found out. So it could have come from that experience. Anyway, so I really tried to keep a lid on this stuff. And it was only when I was in my early 20s when I started reading books and watching documentaries. And and I was like, they're talking about lucid dreaming in this documentary. And I'm like, wait, I can do that. Is that not normal? And then I think my boyfriend at the time I'm watching it with is like, "No, oh my god, you can lucid dream." I'm like, "Yeah." Like I thought everybody could. And so I had this experience of, yeah, like clairvoyance, clairsentience, remote viewing. I was like, "Oh, there's a name for that. It's not just some like terrifying thing that I do." So I'm starting to get language, but can I categorize myself? I don't know. Honestly, I don't know.
Thank you for sharing that. There's a level of truthiness and vulnerability in putting it out there like that. And the ask isn't to label. The ask is to understand as we flip the conversation to something that's very dear to me, which is business
Mhm,
and the questions about profit and purpose or purpose feeding profit. Um, but before we get there, I am 100% open to the possibilities of what might be. And I love to ask the questions, what if and if only? And I feel
mm,
that if more businesses and leaders started with what if or if only and quieted the cleverness that follows thereafter, the results would be remarkably more sustainable. So I'm not a skeptic. I'm not coming at this from uh, anything other than a deep curiosity. What I'd like to pivot to is the instrument that you're talking
mm,
about. And in that regard, you made a comment to me about timing. And I realized that timing affects astrology, timing affects Mother Nature, timing affects business cycles, timing affects culture. So to take this from your experience and your talents to a practical business question,
mhm,
you had shared with me that timing separates a good decision from a great one, in so many words. I'm curious about timing versus opportunity versus financing. Which one of those three is more complete and more important in the construct of the constellation, the frequency, and pulling it forward holistically?
Okay, let me just make a quick note of those three. You got timing, financing, and what was the second one?
Opportunity, timing,
Opportunity.
opportunity, financing.
Well, instinctively, I feel like is my first question is timing and opportunity the same thing? Um, I would phrase opportunity a little differently. I would almost frame it as invitation. So I think in an ideal world, this is how I'd like every business to start. One person or a group of people receive singular or repeated invitations that come through different forms to explore a topic or pursue an idea. And that could look like you receive an intuitive knowing, a voice talks to you, or as you go about your life, people, different people keep mentioning the same thing to you over and over again. Hey, have you thought about this? So I was reading this thing, and this idea is now just circulating around you. That to me is how I translate an invitation. It just keeps coming into your field. And then this one person or multiple, right, if it's co-founders, get together and exchange their own experiences and exchange their energy and see what comes up naturally. They're like, ooh, what you just said is sparking something in me, which is making me think about this. And this idea now gathers energy around it. Then the question is, well, does it feel alive or not? And if it does feel alive, then you, well, you can do two things, which, yeah, it's been what I always did when I started a business. I never looked at market opportunities. I never looked at market research. I never looked for gaps in the market. I never got anyone's advice saying, should I do this thing or not? If it felt alive to me and the world was inviting me to engage with this idea, I just went for it. And I trusted that if there was enough aliveness around it, then questions like, can we get this financed? Can I get the right people? Can I get in the right rooms would get addressed themselves. Now, some people are operating in a bit more of a structured environment. Like, what if you're going through a startup accelerator, or what if you're, opening a new business, a new arm of a very old and existing business, and you have to go through checks and balances and different procedures. Like, you can use this like invitational model, like testing, to explore financing opportunities. What feels most alive? Where is your intuition guiding you? Like, hey, you know what? We always go after the same group of investors for everything we do. But right now I'm feeling like I want to see if we can open some new doors. I want to see if we can get some fresh meat in here, some fresh insight. Like, why don't we, these are the kind of suggestions that tend to get shut down in a
Mm-hmm.
room because they're like, no, we always do it this way. And so what I want to say to business leaders now is, what if you didn't shut that down? What if you let the energy show you or take you somewhere unexpected?
It's very brave and very heroic for many organizations that are structured for risk aversion and
Mm-hmm.
liability assessment. And I think that's problematic. But I think that comes back to coherence in business, does it not? Coherent systems. And you had explained to me that coherent systems autocorrect, self-correct themselves when something's wrong or uh, is not moving toward its own destiny, so to speak. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes. And I tend to look at this in two ways. Well, one is, yeah, it can take its sweet time to do so, which can really throw you off, right? But yes, a coherent system will always self-correct. It could be months, even years down the line, but it will self-correct. And so that's why sometimes businesses or organizations that have been doing so well for so long when the shoe falls from the other foot, it's not like, ooh, a 2% decrease. It's like 28% decrease. Everyone's like,
Yes.
"Whoa." And it's like, yeah, because you were artificially propping up this incoherent system because you had loads of money to throw at it. You had loads of people to throw at it. You basically created a culture around like, let's just keep a lid on this thing. And like force works up to a point. And then you arrive at a place where it's like the straw that breaks the camel's back, and suddenly, everything just crashes. Um, the other tool that I look at, and I know this is going to raise a few eyebrows, and people are going to go, "Come on!" But having studied the astrology charts for the incorporation dates of many businesses, including very large and beloved ones, when you read the astrology chart for the incorporation of that business, or the moment that it was truly born, you can see that it has a destiny. It has a shape and a structure and an idea that it wants to be. And you can see the businesses where the leaders and the stewards of that business have been wise enough to respect that journey, that destiny, and shepherd it along that way. Of course, there's always going to be difficult moments and so on. And then you see businesses where the destiny of that company was not respected and honored. And it was maybe like sold and acquired and broken up and split and trashed on the inside, and it just dies because you cannot transform something away from its destiny for your own personal gain.
So well said. What comes to my mind listening to you is Wells Fargo, a 160-year-old financial institution that stated a culture of trust, community banking, quote unquote, relations, not transactions, and publicly ranked among the most admired companies for years. And what was actually happening was repulsive cross-selling quotas, and employees pushed to impossible targets that between, 2011 and 2016, they opened millions of unauthorized accounts and credit cards and customers' names to hit a quota and crashed. But listening to you, the flip comes to my mind as well, which would be Patagonia.
Mm-hmm.
And Patagonia, that's got this life-giving regenerative process that's self-correcting, and the proof in what they do matters the most. And they're less wasteful over time. And there's this honest tension that's unresolved in how they go about doing it. But the mission asks the customer to work with less, even though the business is in business for consumption. And so that tension for me is a purpose statement with no friction built into it on the incentive level, which brings it back to what you turned me on to, which was coherence in business.
Mm.
Because I had not thought about it. I was always angling on the conversation with you is, does profit drive purpose, or does purpose drive profit?
And then I came out of left field and was like, wait, but what if that question itself is irrelevant because a coherent business, a coherent system, self-correcting, life-giving, generative, the profit happens and the purpose is happening. And the only mistake you can make is if self-interest gets involved and too much profit is being skimmed off to the point where the life-giving stops, right? And when I talk about life-giving, I'm like, there's places where you walk in the office or you walk into headquarters and you're like, oh, it feels really good in here.
Yes.
And then there's other places you walk in and you're like, I smell death.
Yeah, it's like I lived it a couple times. So, and I was with one where it was life-giving and amazing, and then it flipped like a switch, and it was like, I got to get out of here. I don't know how. And it was like a switch, and a switch got flipped in me as well. Like I just diminished.
And that's a beautiful example, right? Where like you're clearly very intuitive. You're very connected, right? Maybe you were less so back then. I don't know, but it's a beautiful example of how every single body, every single organism, every single person in an organization, whether they're aware of it or not, is connected to that system and connected to that field, and they are registering shifts. They are like watch people be seen, recognized, celebrated. Watch like joy and productivity just explode in that department. You know, like take away people's bonuses and don't say anything about it. Watch that whole side of the building just tank. Like I've had experiences where I've literally walked from one side of a headquarters building to the other, and I've tracked how the energy changes as I move through the field of different departments with different bosses.
So it's a language unto itself. And
Yeah.
I do believe firmly in frequencies, whether it's a feeling and for me, it has to do with timing, and it's taken a while to get there. Is the frequency right? And if it's not, I don't fight it anymore. I used to plug it back in. No means
Yeah.
not now. Go, go, go. You can
Yeah.
do it. You can persuade them. Not so much. Um, and so an incoherent system is not sustainable. This is something that we spoke about that I'd like to touch on. I'm rather repulsed with the desire and effort to mitigate risk in today's world. Risk mitigation, predictive algorithms. Let's flatten and understand everything that can be understood. Everything can be measured. So measure it, understand it, and box it. And I think that's when real gets drowned out and inauthentic rises. And so I then land on the truthiness of AI and what an
Mm.
AI simulation is going to do to the sounding language that you're putting out for us today, which for me is very ancestral. And I didn't use the word primal, but I used ancestral because I think it's ancient knowledge that's also future knowledge. And so my ask of you is, can a machine be coherent? Or can a machine only describe coherence?
So I don't know about coherence, but a machine can never tap into the full field of information that a human being can. And actually, there's a really fascinating book that I recommend wholeheartedly. It's called Pure Human by Greg Braden. It came out earlier this year, and he explores some really interesting stuff, like how is intuition passed from mother to baby, and you know, especially in the context of we're going to create artificial wombs and the machine will birth the baby, and he raises a really interesting question. He's like, how do you think our intuition is formed? What happens if we're able to create human beings who didn't go through that process of creating their information field, the one that we take for granted? Um, and that's what I think is machines cannot do. They do not have as many receptors, whether we call them antenna or, like now that we're studying the DNA strand, the DNA, like even in more detail, it's really obvious that there's a sort of antenna nature to DNA. Like it picks up stuff and then it reacts in response. And I'm I don't know anything about this stuff, just for those top level things that I get from books, but it makes sense to me that our bodies, our human bodies, are so much more complex, profound, advanced, like miraculous forms of technology than we can possibly imagine. And we're also in a very interesting time where we are kind of reaching the pinnacle of a long tail of culture that's many centuries, if not millennia old, of not recognizing our own power and projecting that onto machines and thinking the machine is better than us. The machine can do more than us. The machine is more capable than us. I think a lot around this topic of that Marianne Williamson quote, which I think goes something like, it is our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure, and that it is our light, not our darkness, that frightens us. And I think we really, and this is one of the concepts. This is the main idea of Greg Braden's book that he's putting forth: is we are at a decision point as a species. Do we continue on this path where we disown our miraculous powers with all the things that our bodies can do and feel and sense and self-heal and transmit to other bodies, and what we have barely scratched the surface of what we can do, right? Are we going to continue to disown that and fully give away our power to machines that are so disappointing in their capacities compared to what a human body can do? But we have this narrative, this extremely pervasive narrative that they are better than us because they're faster. Oh my God, like as if speed was like the most. Do you look at nature? Like, look, I'm telling everyone now, like, look at nature, look outside, look at a tree, look at a frog, look at the sky. Do you see anywhere in that system that speed is the most important thing? I live in rural Brazil and I have a beautiful avocado tree in my garden, and I watched from October last year when the first tiny avocado buds appeared, right? The first fruit. And until May of this year, when I could actually harvest and eat them. That's like a human gestation period for a fruit. For a fruit. Like, I think we can all agree that being faster is not considered very important in the rest of what this beauty is, right? So how do we manage to decide that speed and efficiency is the holy grail of existence, right?
I am drinking from your altar. I agree 100%. I think that those aha moments, I don't know how I got there, but eureka, that middle of the night where I wake up and have to jot something down on a notepad, or I'm out on a long run and all of a sudden I remembered or found a solve that I can't explain, is legit. It's real. I think we all experience it. I'm a bit of a crusader on a war path here to fight for humanness and the humanities,
Yeah. Yes.
because
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where art, culture, collaboration, community will thrive. This is remarkable. Imogen, we're coming at the top of the hour. I have two questions left that I'd like to ask of you. Actually, three. The first question that I want to ask is, light not our darkness that frightens us. Something you said earlier. Apply that to yourself.
So credit to Marianne Williamson where credit is due. I've said this to you privately, and I'm not ashamed to say it here on the podcast. I am terrified of my own life. Terrified. Like, I get it. I get why we're like, oh, AI is so great. Oh my God, AI can do all this stuff for me. Oh, I don't have to think about that. I don't have to sit with that. I don't have to feel that feeling. I don't have to work that out. I don't have to listen to my own knowing. Um, and I feel like one of the things I'm here to explore, you asked right at the beginning, who am I? Who am I becoming? Is to walk the edge of this question. What is my light? Am I willing to sit by it, be warmed by it, not be blinded by it? Engage with it, share it with others, turn it into something useful, just for play, right? I'm very fortunate that I'm surrounded by people who have dedicated their lives to the miraculousness of the human body and spirit, whether they're a healer, an acupuncturist, and so every single day I have my worldview shattered by some old Japanese woman, or just a throwaway comment about the miraculousness of humanity and nature. Oh yes, but of course you can do that yourself. What do you mean? I can't, regenerate an organ. I can't. Oh really? I've seen it done.
Well, that leans back into the possibility and the
Yeah.
wonder and the wander. And you can come at it and say, no, that's a grifter. No, that's frugali. No, no, no. Or you can come in and go, is it possible? And quite frankly, I've been blessed with several tier one operators that have come on the podcast that were suffering from combat related trauma. that took plant medicine, the sacrament, and had a worldview changed and a mindset open to the possibilities of something much greater.
Mm,
And these are hardened, serious, professional experts at what they do, subject matter experts, tactically, intellectually, professionally. And so when we have a conversation about the gift that you have, I wish I have a wish for you and for those listening, in that it's embraced with reverence and resonance and relevance. And I think it's important. And I think the plant based medicine's an exclamation point of what's happening
mm,
to cultural stereotypes and norms. I have another wish for you, Imogen. That's one word. It's something I would like for you to adopt in your every deliberation, applied to yourself, not to your clients. And that's grace.
mm,
I'd like for you to be graceful and accepting of whatever wonder or wonder there may be. You know me to be a big fan of the unknown. And that comes from a place of being a data hound. I love big data. I love crunching numbers. I love looking for patterns that don't exist and finding what's next through these trend analysis. But a part of that is relinquishing control to say, I don't know. I'm going to experience it and then formulate that into my logic. It may not be everyone's logic. You're a remarkable gift. And I mean that with the deepest sincerity. I said at the start of the show, timing of this couldn't be more perfect on multiple levels. And hopefully, we've touched on a variety of different levels. Some people will receive these as expert and amazing, and others may look at it like entertainment. And I don't care because it's information, and we're putting information out in the universe as a transmission for others to pick up, to respond to. I think we're all at the edge of new growth. I love your analogy of biomimicry. I love gestation. Mother Nature doesn't have meetings. They don't have earning calls. They're not worried about fruit yields. They're not. And yet, look at the magic and majestic things that are produced every season with continuity, consistency, and regularity.
mm. Amen.
Yes. If someone would like to get in touch with you for a collaboration, a consultancy, a business assessment, or just to touch base, how would you like one to do that?
So the best way you can reach me is my website. It's imogenroy.com. So that's IMOGENROY. A lot of vowels. And I would be delighted to hear from anyone, even just to share their thoughts or anything that came up to them after listening to this. I echo what you said, Miles. There is a lot that I shared or we discussed that may not land with absolute clarity or even in any understandable framework for some, and I totally respect that. I myself am on a journey of letting go a little bit more and sinking into some of these experiences and abilities that I've had. Uh, and and I feel like for me, the way that felt safe to do that was just seeing how looking at the world logically just wasn't working anymore. And so I trust that everyone should just move at their own pace in their own time based on their own feeling senses. Um, and I welcome, like you mentioned, the return to investigations, plant medicine, being able to provide that to people who deeply need it. And I leave as a final meditation for all of us the question, what would it take to consider that what we call reality is a lot more loosely attached than we thought?
And with that, may I say amen. Mosen, this has been a blessing. Who are you? You're one that brings clarity to chaos while embracing other worldly inputs. Your role for us and the broader audience is both a timing strategist and a business astrologer. And the frame set that you're delivering is proximity to better. And we can all use better today. Friends, family, and cohorts, this has been another episode of the Fight or Flight podcast. I hope you enjoyed Imogen as much as I do.